Good morning, afternoon, all. We just want to introduce Volavia today. I'm Graham York, one of the co-founders of Volavia, and we are addressing an industry desperate for change, faced with countless problems covering their transactional issues, their privacy, their payments, and their itineraries, namely the private travel and private industry. Angus, I think you've got some sort of colour to add to your views on this.
Well, yes, I started. I've been involved in the internet for 1,000 years, and actually been doing talks on blockchain for the last 3 years. And the example I always used was one about airlines and jets and private jets. How that would be a great thing to actually tokenize and put on the blockchain. And then it's kind of ironic that I've ended up actually with Graham on the Volavia project, and it's sort of prediction made true.
Prediction come true. And the reason we're addressing the private industry is they have these meta trends across the industry. And we say meta because underneath each of these there are distinct problems covering increased cybercrime attack on high net worth individuals, FX and payment fragmentation, cross-border and indeed time-based issues, and increasingly privacy and confidentiality, whereby the target of hackers is the very itineraries of private jet high net worth travelers. And this really impacts 3 layers of the ecosystem. Mark Green, one of our co-founders, is one of the brokers that serves the middle layer of the industry. The brokers are the glue that sits between high net worth individuals and the individual airline operators, and provide the trust level through which high net worth individuals book and plan their itineraries. And these brokers are facing a raft of IT, transactional, payment, FX issues, and they're the ones who I think are flooding to us in droves, wanting to use the platform. And perhaps, Mark, in a second or two, you could talk through some of the issues. What I want to describe basically is that when each of us flies with large-scale airlines. I got off an American Airlines flight yesterday, and my itinerary went through the transactional security of a clearinghouse called Sabre for the industry, and private jet does not have that clearinghouse structure. The transactions that we book through online travel agents and airlines, despite the glorious web interfaces, all run through aging mainframe centralized solutions of Sabre and Amadeus, those 2 large platforms. And those solutions are effectively the clearing houses of the industry that provide transactional integrity, privacy, settlement, bankruptcy protection. They are the points through which everything runs. Now, it's interesting, actually, when we first sat down with Richard Mumford, actually, Mark, the chairman of the industry body for private jets, he said, Graham, we were about to build a centralized clearinghouse for private aviation to solve all these issues. We're on the verge of funding and creating a large-scale body. You have come along from this decentralized base layer instead to address all these issues from the bottom end of the solution. So, and Richard has now joined our advisory board. Mark, it'd be helpful if you could talk through some of the issues faced by the industry,
The very nature of the private jet industry is very last minute. A lot of it's booked. And it's a 24/7 industry. It runs 365 days a year, which has its own problems with banks. You may receive an inquiry that comes in on a Saturday and the client can't pay you. This resolves that issue. You may have a differential between the time you quote it, the time you receive the money, and the time you pay your supplier, and the FX changes that within that can erode your margin hugely. This solves that problem as well. We won't even bother going into the GDPR issues that are associated with the transactions that we do. This solves it anyway. So there are,
I think, Mark, also we're seeing an awful lot of stolen, intercepted transactions. Several million pounds a day are being intercepted in the industry and redirected.
Well, if you imagine, if you're a cyber crime dude, if you like, and you're sitting there in your bedroom, you intercept one transaction. Some of the jets that we book are the value of houses. The biggest transaction I've ever done was $1.6 million
for a single transaction.
For a single transaction for a single flight. I would suggest the average value of the charters that I've been doing in the last 25 years has been around 30 to 40,000 euros.
Yes.
Now, if you consider that they only need to intercept one of these payments, they need to hack into the system and divert funds somewhere, That's not a bad day at the office.
Not a bad day's work. And so I think the issue that's also being solved here is that Richard talks about the issue of transfer and risk and value, because that 1.6 million transferred is being transferred by, say, the Skype founder, who's your customer, to your bank account, then onto the bank account. So where is the contractual framework around that? I think, Angus, you say smart contracts are almost designed for this problem. So what is the framework that encompasses that and provides a legal settlement protocol and completion? That is missing across the industry, right? And so, by the way, just one point to make here is that we're not talking purely about a purely elite high net worth industry. We're seeing private aviation dropping down to corporate, sporting, and becoming more and more democratized in its usage. And the characteristic of the industry, it's a highly multi-layered, complex, interlinked ecosystem whereby you've got these various parties and the growth in large booking platforms who are all involved in a single transaction and a chain of transactions tied together. So this is not trivial to architect or build. It's got a very high barrier to entry. We are, therefore, being very careful to keep our demarcation line clear. Good companies that grow fast in Silicon Valley know where to integrate and where not to compete. There's a layer in the industry of availability, search and booking that's raised hundreds of millions of funding recently on high valuations. We are not attempting to compete with that. In fact, we're in discussion with about 6 of those people in the top row about integration of their platform as an API into Volavia, which will provide the decentralized contractual and financial layer for them as partnerships. Now, 1 or 2 of these represents, the turnover of these represents hundreds of millions a year revenue for the Volavia platform on an API basis. So it's a very, very clearly distinct play. I think also, Angus, your point earlier about smart contracts.
Yeah, so what's going on under the hood? So each leg of a jet is perfect for a smart contract. And what's also perfect is linking them together. So the contract will be a combination of legs, contracts for each leg, and what's great about it is you can validate whether the plane has landed, for example, or in Mark's case, when it's arrived, because that's when you get the cash. So, yeah, exactly. So all these things can be automated. The funds can be released immediately, and it's a beautiful example of the blockchain.
Almost the perfect smart contract example, almost.
Yes, with the release of funds, the escrow of the funds, the release, the automation of that.
Yes, escrow.
So, sorry, can we get the next?
Yeah, I think it's an escrow point, by the way, as well. So that's worth reiterating, that those funds are being moved into an independent smart contract, which, as you say, represents escrow of those flight funds rather than bank account transfer. So moving on to some, this can be seen as being a very, very niche industry. By no means niche. It is one of the world's most valuable industries in terms of numbers. Remarkable size. It's a 250 billion industry in total. And one thing to reiterate, that thanks to our founding aviation team, we have strong contacts at every echelon of the industry. We expect to sign circa 50 or 60 partners that we are now in advanced discussion with during the first 3 months of our platform being live. Announce those as trading partners. The industry has received a lot of funding itself and is being digitalized. It's actually going through a wave of being moved to a more behavioral digital approach to transactions, and so we are arriving at the right time. I won't dwell on the various aspects of our team, but even just looking at our economic advisory for our token ecosystem, Rashid Hussain Ali, who advises us on our economic stability aspects, was actually the MD of FX for Deutsche Bank. So it's a fairly strong team across the board. The feedback from the industry, Mark, has been very, very strong. Extraordinarily, even that they've approached IBM to seek blockchain advice. They were considering trying to build their own blockchain solution, will now work with us. And that the archaic systems mean they're losing revenue. At least 75% of our prospective partners have said we currently lose revenue due to the inefficiency of the whole system. So we represent new revenue for the platform.
Great. Just on that, ironically, there's a number of conferences involved in aviation and blockchain is becoming a more and more involved part of these. oddly enough, they had an IBM, I know IBM was mentioned in the last presentation, but they had an IBM gentleman who was stood there, and we were working in the background. We've been working on this for more than 12 months now.
Yeah.
And we sat and went, he's just not got it. And he hadn't. The IBM guy was explaining how it all works, but he wasn't
Addressing
explaining
the industry's issues.
how it integrates into the system of
Yeah.
the industry, because there was no practicality involved in it. It was all theory.
Yes.
Now, what we've done, we were sort of sitting there going, we're liking this because he's raising the profile, and he's IBM, of course, and that's great. And then we come into the fore, and that's when we have nailed how it goes into the industry and how it does integrate.
We've nailed the workflow of the industry. Absolutely.
That's why you put fruitless in the previous slide.
We've had fruitless conversations. Yeah. Well, the problem is they are theoretical, right? Then they're not practical application of, you know.
Instead of partnership.
I'm glad you were reading. That's good.
Whoops. Direct quote. So I think, Steve, let's talk through some of the architecture of Volavia now. So over to you, if you could please talk through our two-token structure.
Well, I'll just introduce it. So what we've done is it's a two-token system. The vol represents the network ownership, and then the actual transaction token is the Eru, and they're actually running on different technologies, which I'll just, Steve.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Steve. I'm relatively new member to the Volavia team, but I'm working on the technical white paper at the moment and the reference design for the platform. But fundamentally, yeah, as Angus just introduced, there is a two-token system, the vol and the Eru. Now, the vol initially from initial token offerings and the mechanics around that will be ERC20 compliant Ethereum-based token that will ultimately be used to as a voting mechanism in terms of the organization itself, which the organization will largely be a combination of industry stakeholders. And that's very important to us from a value set, is that this is a solution for the industry. In terms of the Eru itself, there's some key characteristics around that which really drive a lot of our decisions. Privacy, untraceability, at its core being paramount to some of the decisions that we take in terms of that technology. What we're not trying to do is end up, this is an industry solution. We're not trying to be a horizontal, brand new protocol, because that's a big hole to kind of fall into in terms of the R&D aspect. So what we're really trying to take the time to do is make sure that we're matching the developments being done in existing technologies, existing protocols, and to piece them together in a way that makes sense for this industry. And that's a very clear statement that we're kind of making.
And you're investigating cryptonote-based protocols for the mainnet because of that privacy vector as well, aren't you, as an example,
Yeah, I mean, the leading technologies there, but what it does as a base layer is it gives us the ability to then bring in other important aspects of the platform, such as the staking, the proof of stake mechanisms, smart and private smart contracts, the reputation management system, that are layers on top of that core underlying technology. And that's where we will focus and are focusing a lot of our attention in terms of our own research and development.
I think whatever technologies we use, there's certain absolute inviolate principles we have. And those principles are the industry owns and runs this solution. So industry ownership is the staking protocol. Privacy is the key design protocol. These are inviolate, and there's a distinct difference between vol and Eru. Vol is the industry token, as you said, Michael. Scarcity and staking are the two key characteristics of the vol token. But there's going to be interoperability between those. You've got plenty of vol contributors who are also private jet users. You've got plenty of Eru transactional users who are also investors. So there's going to be a continual flow between those two tokens, as well as. In addition, there are areas we're even looking at temporal release of data. When a flight is over, why should Mark still hold the passport and private details of a traveler on your PC, which is insecure, temporal release of that data, secure storage. I think even we're looking at the messaging layer and the insecurity of email currently in use, and building in a messaging layer on the platform as well for the industry. Team is the usual. I'll sort of brush over. That's available in case you want to look at the deck afterwards. I think we've got 3 paths going on right now. We are obviously working on an investment strategy, ably guided by Michael, in terms of where we are very much in a high net worth family office industry, and that's proving very helpful in our fundraising. Technology stream, where we're advancing the technology protocols and building of an industry that wants a solution very, very, very quickly. And finally, industry work to finalize their use cases and build partners. The question is, what's the network effect that drives this out and makes this instantly used across the industry? The answer is the broker layer. These are the ones who are desperate for the platform, and they're the ones who can enforce the usage across the entire industry. And by the way, also worth wrapping up that we are in discussion with all kinds of interesting lateral use cases. Thanks to my background as CTO of the world's airline global platforms, we are reaching out to corporate booking. We've got a leading European airline wants to interchange their loyalty rewards. We've got Dover with their driver rewards, looking at ability to trade those up into low-cost private jet flights, experiential travel, and a large corporate booking platform, all in advanced discussions who could work with us on an ongoing basis. So it's got extensibility. I think your point is key. We're not trying to reinvent a protocol. We're trying to stand on the emergent shoulders of best practice in the industry and use that to build a solution for an industry that's crying out for change. Right, over to you guys for questions.
So what exactly are you building? So it's a protocol, but not a protocol.
It's not a protocol.
Microphone.
Thank you so much. Actually, an amazing presentation, perhaps one of the best today. And obviously, the industry, like many others, need a blockchain solution. The question is, would they need a token, of course? But this is a very important question. So this is a protocol based on existing technology, which was not very clear from the presentation, which technology is going to be used to deliver a killer application.
Yes, we're clarifying those technologies, and the release of our white paper in a few weeks will give final clarification on those. I think the key factor for us is which offer the most contiguous privacy at every layer of the transaction because of the data we're carrying. That's our final technical choices being made on for the mainnet. What we are clear on are what the design of the protocols are that will drive those technologies, if that makes sense. So the linked smart contract protocol is clear.
Not yet decided, right?
Getting close, very, very close. Very close indeed.
How does the currency flow to your network? So I understand there's a smart contract, but obviously the smart contract will lock up Ethereum or some other crypto asset. So I've got my $1 million. I'm going to hire a private jet somewhere. What's the next step in that chain?
Mark, a customer. Great news. When do you want to fly?
Answer the mic.
So we're offering a what Volavia is building is an exchange into Eru to allow the high net worth or the corporate booker or the person in the family office to translate that $1 million into our Eru transactional coin. And actually what the smart contract will wrap is Eru, not Ethereum itself, or not indeed fiat. So we're offering that translation from fiat into the currency. And obviously by doing that, taking out the horrendous FX margin costs that are currently being experienced of 3 to 4% across the industry.
So you're going to have like an
exchange,
An
right? Exchange. Absolutely. We are architecting exchange, initially centralized, ultimately fully decentralized exchange on the platform, thanks to our work with the Deutsche Bank team.
Okay.
Yes.
So if let's say, right now, if I'm signed up with like a Delta Jets or something,
Yes.
that's only good for the US. But maybe I want to go elsewhere in Europe or something like that. So as I understand it, your token is going to be good around the world.
Cross-border.
For a customer.
Yeah. vital cross-border. Because
is
I
really a
think
big
most of
thing.
our customers in the industry are traveling cross-border anyway. Most of their flights are crossing countless international borders.
So how are you going to stabilize your coin?
Our economic team has published a set of well-accepted economic principles for stabilization with the SDR basket protocol. Ultimately, though, we're going to move that towards stabilizing based upon the volume of different currencies that are being injected into the platform. So if our platform becomes very ruble or very, oriented towards euros or dollars, there will be stabilization. And then secondly, the individual smart contract stabilizes the price for each transaction for the duration of that transaction.
So if I throw in $1 million, it's going to be worth $1 million, let's say.
It's going to be worth $1 million of flight costs
All right.
at all times.
Thank you.
How much are you trying to raise?
I turn to one of our advisors here. We at the moment, we're raising from individual high net worth. They're quite substantial investments. We think this will be a $30 to $50 million fundraise, don't we, Michael, in total, for the overall platform. And then in addition to that, we're going to be holding, obviously, a user growth fund and obviously staff allocation. But that is the extent within that vol scarce token. There's no dilution by the utility. Sorry?
Not going to a pre or public sale, but this is all predominantly going to be private.
To date, it's all been individual high net worth, charter-aware, private jet-aware users, yes. On the jets, family offices, precisely. Yes.
And how many private jet companies already involved with you?
Sorry?
How many private jet companies you already?
We have the chairman of the industry body on our advisory board. We have 5 or 6 working with us formally. We have 50 or 60 in late stage discussion who would all sign a letter of intent tomorrow if we asked.
Just to add to that, I think when the ball starts rolling, we have, as Graham suggested, around 50 that will be signing up without any question. Those are the easy ones that we know will do it anyway. The industry will gather pace within the industry. When 10 sign up, 10 more will sign up. The momentum will just follow right the way through. To give you an idea, there's around, as it said there, about 21,000 jets worldwide. Not all of those are charter. A lot of those are private individuals owned by the individual that flies him or her and the family and the dog and everybody else. They don't charter it to the general public. But within that, there's about 750 air companies. That's airlines that may have between 1 and 50 aircraft that will sign up.
Everyone we've spoken to date has really given one answer. It hasn't been whether or not I use it. Their answer has been, this solves problem X for us.
Well, actually, the answer is, when can I have it?
When can I have it? This solves FX. This solves weekend payments. This solves GDPR. The answer's always been, this solves something in each conversation we've had.
Actually, everything.
Thank you. Anybody else? Good. Thanks all. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.